Senator Henry.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, can you grant me leave first in recognizing the performance of the West Indies cricket team, the female West Indies cricket team here in St. Lucia. They did very, very well, Madam President. And of course, I think it's in place that we just say this because St. Lucians turned out in large numbers to support them. That's unprecedented in terms of the kind of support we've seen for the female West Indies team. This is really, really encouraging. Thank God it was at the Darren Sami cricket ground, and a ground belonged to us and not that belonged to Theo King or Ojo Labs. So indeed, we are thankful for such a wonderful place. Yes, you could continue beating your drums, but of course it's indeed a wonderful experience for us St. Lucians to be at the home ground and watch the ladies of the Caribbean do so well. I was indeed pleased. Yeah. Madam President, I am here to speak on this motion. And as I listened to the leader of government business made his pronouncement to justify, as it were, borrowing, for a moment I heard he was singing a lullaby and his voice went up, but there was modulation. And I suspect when it went down, it's maybe to remind us that it's not all very well with us at this point in time in our economy. But at the time when his voice went up, I was saying to myself, Madam President, maybe the public servants are listening and everybody in St. Lucia are hearing that it is well in St. Lucia. You could get your salary increases. We can do everything right. There's money's enough for everyone. The hospitals can be fixed because the voice went up, almost echoing, as it were, a good day. Hallelujah. A hallelujah day. Of course, the civil servants are hearing and they may have sensed and may have read from your presentation this morning, and I hope that you would meet them and you would give them what they're asking, and other persons as well. But let's get into this substantive discussion, that of borrowing. And I want to speak to it, Madam President, just from three angles. One, trend versus promises. Two, the priorities and relevance. And finally, the Creole response to reckless borrowing. Let us look at trend and promises. Madam President, I believe that this administration, this side of government, on this part of history have borrowed more monies in 2 years than John Compton may have borrowed in probably 15 years. Subject to be corrected. But this is a lot of borrowing. And when you juxtapose this to the promises made, this government said that they would not be borrowing. They said they would not be borrowing. Do not try to qualify. Do not try to qualify it now. Do not try to qualify it now. There's records, and there's a young lady, Madam President, and I wish a lot of St. Lucians probably take that same approach, a young lady from ancillary countries. She verbatim just measuring what was said as against what is happening, and that is so beautiful. I suspect this is one of the major developments in our political history where ordinary people can hold politicians to account. Ou di ou pa te kay prete l'argent pièce. C'est ça ou te dit. Pas vin di ou pa te kay prete si la pa ni l'argent pour vieux payer. Ou di ou pa te kay prete l'argent. Mais ou a prete tellement l'argent. Billion dollars à de l'année a prete. So that's why this morning you had to sing the lullaby of growth. Growth. Madam President, in my lifetime, and the way I grew up and where I grew up, Madam President, this is easy for me to understand. Easy for me to understand. Because, Madam President, there are homes. When you grew up, you would see the father driving a fancy car. But if you're from Marshall, Madam President, not long you would hear the wife. She would speak loud enough and tell him that, hey, you're not caring for the children. All you're doing is driving a fancy car. Of course, there was growth in the family, but it did not resonate with members of the family. The growth that you're speaking about, one, I will tell you that it doesn't resonate with the rest of the population. Everybody in St. Lucia, the majority of St. Lucians are not speaking about growth. Madam President, I am in Dominica most of the time, and you believe Roseau is the capital of Castries. All the workers I know to be craftsmen, masons and carpenters are in Roseau, working. If there was such growth, why are there so many St. Lucians, Madam President, in Dominica? Is this what has contributed to your growth? The fact that St. Lucians are there working? In fact, a mason told me that in his category, he doesn't believe that there's anybody left in Bexon to do masonry work, and he's a good craftsman. Don't smile. I will not reveal, Madam President, some things that I know. Oh, you have 5 from Bexon working for you. Well done. In fact, Madam President, there are members here who have businesses participating in the one way or the other in the aspects of development in St. Lucia, and I'm happy for you on this side. But be careful that it is not a conflict of interest. I know you're a very good businessman, so I would hope that it is not conflict of interest. But those 5 still live in Beck. So I agree. But I'm saying just hope that it's not conflict of interest. Because you're also the chairman of the Housing Corporation. But I'm saying, Madam President, that...
Madam President, I rise on a point of Section 37.
Rise on the point of what, Madam President? I didn't hear anything.
Order. Point of order. Section 37(5). No senator shall impute improper motives by any member of either chamber. So by saying that directing his comments to the Senator Mangal is imputing improper motives, and that should not be done.
Thank you very much, Madam President. If I have said anything to impute proper motives, I withdraw it, sir. I would in no way. But I did say that I hope it's not conflict of interest, and I do not think it's conflict of interest. However, last week I got the barrage of Ida Inc.
Senator Henry.
Yeah.
When you withdraw, you withdraw. You don't comment again on the withdrawal because you might be airing again.
Thank you very much for your guidance. I will do withdraw. Yes, let me proceed. I think the substantive point needs to be made. That there are people working in Dominica. Roseau is like Castries. You know, so many, Madam President, I suspect maybe I can account personally knowing at least 30 to 50 individuals working in Roseau. And there's growth, construction, the regular construction workers. So I can account for at least 30 working in Roseau. My friend on the other side said that he can account for 5 working in St. Lucia. Oh, with him, okay, thanks. You know, but the point I'm making, Madam President, is that the growth that you speak about to justify borrowing, and I'm going to get to this, you did promise St. Lucians, and St. Lucians know that for a fact that you cannot deny because you campaign on this. And I said it during the election period. I told St. Lucians, and I said it here, it is one thing to campaign, it's another thing to govern. You campaigned that you would not be borrowing because the last administration was reckless. If you quantify the amount of borrowing that has taken place, chaque l'année nous venons ici c'est pour prêter l'argent. Borrow, borrow, borrow. So, you promised that you would not be borrowing, but you have been borrowing. So the trend is that you're borrowing and you're borrowing. And Madam President, one of the things that, a point that I need to make, and it's very important, that when this administration presented the last budget, there was a theme: building resilience today for the future. That was the theme. Building resilience today for the future. When I heard the theme, at the time I thought that was quite an ambitious theme. But Madam President, I would like to state that one characteristic of resilience is the ability to bounce back after a shock. The ability to bounce back. And when you go into one of the characteristics of resilience is your ability to bounce back. And as one who has been performing loss adjusting roles for a company in Dominica after Maria, Madam President, which taught me a lot of life lessons. Life lessons. Madam President, we are so vulnerable in this island. So vulnerable that we're not aware of it. And for example, I heard the member for the last time spoke of housing. Madam President, this is an area of vulnerability when we are exposed to hurricanes like Category 5. So many middle-income people have not recovered in Dominica. Either underinsured, some of them own what they could not have maintained. So your ability to bounce back after a shock, after a disaster, is important. But if you are borrowing so much, where is the fiscal place to maneuver if there is a disaster in this country? Si la ni a gros problème, si la ni a cyclone qui vient croiser pied, si ou ka prêter l'argent tellement, ou jusqu'à prêter l'argent pour assis avec manger $14 million for workshop. And Madam President, I'll speak a little deeper on this workshop thing. Madam President, I've been in the public service for 25 years. I've been in workshops. In fact, just before I left in 2015, I think there was a consultant here dealing with budgeting. To sit with him, and you have to put your objectives and all of those things together and show what are you going to do. Some of what is mentioned there. Madam President, over 25 years in the public service, there have been workshops upon workshops doing this very same thing. Or people leave, so you're retooling. Madam President, I understand that point too. But I will tell you one of the things I've discovered, Madam President. At the workshops, people leave the workshops and go out, you know. During my time. You know why? I know that already. I tired hearing people repeating the same thing. That's true. And if you send them overseas, they leave the workshops and they go and shop. Oh, that sounds like me. Oh, yeah. You investigate your permanent secretaries and come back to me. You understand? Or ask them to submit the reports. I am telling you, Madam President, there is almost a level of wastage that all of us can identify. But why do you borrow for workshops? Put you kay prete la pour ni workshops pour bay moun mayonnaise avec pain. You know, mayonnaise with tuna fish in between it and juice. And then you have free breaks. Breakfast breaks, lunch break and tea break. And after lunch break, they're not returning, you know, Madam President. You couldn't find them after lunch break. They're not returning. Because they have to pick up their children. You understand? Why are you going to spend $13 million on workshops to advance the cause of this country? And you know it's a wastage. That's strong. I'm not afraid to say it. As a matter of fact, in coming here in 2018, I asked myself, what am I going to say about this? I am not you that probably just come by. I spent 25 years in the public service, sir. And as a St. Lucian, my heart bleed. It bleeded then and even now as to what we do with monies in the name of development. And I move quickly into the area of priorities. Not just that I find it's a waste, but what else can you do with $14 million, Madam President? $14 million. Madam President, you could run short-term employment for 12 years, employing 2,500 persons. 12 years, employing 2,500 persons. Step. You understand? $1 million a year. Instead of sending people to sit in a workshop to eat tuna fish sandwich with mayonnaise, you could employ 2,000 persons for 12 years doing cleaning the streets. Priority. I'm not saying you should do that, but that's one. I saw a hospital last night on YouTube, Madam President, where the sewer line or some line is pouring, break down. I heard there's a need to renovate Castries Comprehensive School at $13 million, Madam President, about quantity survey, and I jump up when I heard that. Jump up. Madam President, how high? I'll tell you. It's because I spent 25 years in the public service. I started there as grade 12 as a quantity surveyor. I moved to grade 14, grade 16. I was the senior quantity surveyor in the Ministry of Planning. And we built the school next door, Madam President. The next door. Oh, that was, yes, we built it at $1.8 million for the tallest block.
Madam President, I rise on a point of order.
Can you put rise or shy or Jordi?
All right, well, I'll continue rising, but Section 37 indicates that the senator shall confine his observations to the subject matter on the discussions. I don't see how Castries Comprehensive falls under the subject matter that we're dealing with. And I mean, you're just grandstanding. You need to.
Senator Henry, let us stick to the observations and the discussion, please.
You. Madam President, I wouldn't stop you all when you're all, I notice everybody's taking notes, so at some point in time you all will be coming back to respond. I know that. There'll be 4 persons responding, one after the other. So I don't know why you're afraid to allow me to make my contribution. But Madam President, I'm speaking about the priorities, what you could do with $13 million. Because we are borrowing $13 million for a workshop. I do not know how else can I contribute to the debate if I do not share. And I did praise in my contribution, Madam President, by highlighting, I will speak to it in terms of trend and promises, priorities, and relevance. And finally, the Creole approach to reckless borrowing. That's how I stated, Madam President, that I would make my contribution. So I said, yes, Madam President, the Minister of Finance did say that it needs $14 million to renovate, and I'm saying that $14 million will not be needed, but we can fix the Castries Comprehensive School. That's what I'm saying. Priority than for a workshop. We can fix the hospital. We could complete St. Jude. Madam President, for a moment, I am thinking, are we in this sort of a mindset of absurdity, or are we in a mindset of like we are all insane and we cannot speak to or say when something is not right? Is it not fair to articulate something that is different? We all must say the same thing? Why do we have 2 Nobel laureates? Because we are a country of brilliance. And I'm saying that borrowing $14 million in 2018 for a workshop to tell people how to implement. Madam President, I would tell you one of the things I've witnessed in some of those workshops. These solutions that have left our public service go and work for those donor agencies come back and stand in front of us to tell us the things that they said while they were there. So they use them. So they may use Dr. Anthony George to come and sit before us. He was at the ministry already. And tell us the things that he said before. And to what extent that we adhere to those things. There's a culture part of it, Madam President. A deep part of our problem in the public service is one political commitment to processes and procedures, you know. There are a lot of things that have been said to the public service over the years, some of them sitting there and they resist them. So when they tell them prepare a sort of targeting instrument to provide support, I use that for an example, Madam President. So CDB say, look here, you need to come up with all of the poor communities. I have $9 million, and you need to rank as to which communities should benefit from the resources. I am only supporting educational, water and sanitation. I forget the third one. This is on the BNTF, Basic Need Trust Fund Program 9. Madam President, we went through the process. We selected 50 communities, 60 of the poorest communities, based on our poverty indicators. We submitted them, and then we apply or overlay the priorities or the areas the CDB wants to intervene. And we found Dennery, where we would do a preschool costing $1.something million. And the next community that happened to, after all of the communities benefited, we had a little bit of surplus because the amount of money also is a factor, was Goodlands. Goodlands got a little road, a little footpath because they were on the 50. There are members of this administration out there saying that this last administration implemented project politically in Goodlands, whereas it's the CDB that has its own process. So if we did a Goodlands project, why did we do a preschool in Dennery? Why did the same instrument from CDB allow us to implement a preschool that costed more money in Dennery then? Why did the Labour Party build a preschool in Dennery? And I'm talking about Dennery South. $1.2 million, that's what the tool produced. We adhere to it. But you know what? For the two, and I'm talking about adhering to these things that we'll be doing in the so-called lab, workshops. I call it so-called because you've not articulated exactly what it is. The labs, the workshops. So, Madam President, and I need to know how much time I have left because I do not want to. 2 hours, thank you. Thank you, but you are not the authority of the House. I would do with it because there's a lot I can say. But, Madam President.
Senator, you have 15 minutes left.
Thank you very much, 15 minutes. So, Madam President, the issue of borrowing $13 million at this time. $13 million to do workshops when you promised that you would not be borrowing. You cannot justify this. You cannot. Workshops in the public service. During the time of the Prime Minister Sir John, Ms. Zenith James, the Director of Finance, when I sat with them at that time, there weren't many workshops then. They did the work. These people are trained. We have some of the best trained individuals in the public service. We have. That's what you're doing now? Well, I know before you came, we had the best. Avant de venir tout any primaire, moi pas savoir qui ça fait yo. You understand? I don't know. You're all confused right now. Are you all coming from this side, going on that side? 50% of you all on that side confused because 50% on your side came from on the other side. In fact, I think 75%. Zot malade, mon pasa. You understand? Mon pasa là. I'm telling you. But Madam President, this is how I would put it in Creole term. Borrowing, reckless borrowing. Reckless borrowing in Creole term. And this is how it is experienced. Madam President, just imagine you, and I rather say it in Creole, you know. I prefer the Creole part of it. And you sort of the famille, l'école fermée. L'école fermée, c'est vacances. Tout le monde la cour, ka jouer, toute maman ka jouer. Maman wa kaila, l'école fermée, l'école ka ouvert, so ou sab. Maman ni en toi ka pour acheter livre l'école pour l'école qui ka ouvert. Il même pas ouais l'argent, côté l'argent ka sorti. Pour y acheter livre l'école, pour y acheter uniforme. Mais gars ça, ou aller bo kaya moun ek ou tan moun ka di ishli ka aller à sous vacances. So why kaya ou ek di mami? Dawn and them say they're going to New York on holidays, and Miss Carmen say, if you can come up with the ticket money, I will go with them. And then your mother responds by telling
Madam President, may I invoke section 37 of the standing order? It says, subject to the provisions of the standing orders, debates upon any motion, bill, or amendment shall be relevant to such motion, bill, or amendment, and the senator shall confine his observations to the subject under discussion. Madam President, this is a discussion about the motion that was brought to the House for the borrowing of 4.2 or 4.3 million US dollars for the undertaking of workshop training for our public servants. And I need to remind the leader of government, the leader of opposition business, that this is not a political platform, but this is the House. And I believe, Madam President, he needs to confine his contribution to the motion before us right now.
Yes, Madam President. So I was just putting it in Creole term, what reckless borrowing look like. So your mother would say to you...
So Senator Henry,
yeah.
What I would say is that I understand that you wish to show fine examples as to why the borrowing should be for different reasons.
Yeah.
But I will cite section 44 and remind you that you've made the point several times, and tedious repetition is not in order. So I'll ask you to proceed.
Yeah. Yes, Madam President. Thank you. So, Madam President, thank you. And I'm ending on this note. I'm really ending on this note. That when you approach your parent to acquire something that is not within her reach, like asking her to go on holidays with a next family with neighbor children who are able to do so because she has something more important to do for you. She's not aware as to where she's getting the resources to take you to school, to get your school books and this sort of thing. She would meet your request with a certain language. And a good parent would tell you, so do vamwe exhibits like a ukadia. And Madam President, I see government as a more elaborate family. In fact, 160,000 people in a population. I've been to China where there are billions of people. And I've been to the hills in one family setting in China that was more than the population of St. Lucia. In fact, you entered the family gate. And I've always likened the development agenda of St. Lucia like somebody being in charge of a large family. And as you take decisions, Madam President, I'm not the expert in economics, but I think you could reduce what you're doing from the perspective of what a good parent would do. And that is why, Madam President, the ordinary St. Lucians would understand the analogy that I brought to them. What are the priorities? We have the hospital that need fixing. We have schools that need fixing. You're going to take $13 million and invest in workshop and using standing orders to tell me I cannot say that where I feel like I'm on the market step. In fact, that's the best place to discuss it, it looks like. Maybe it's a good place to discuss it. I do not want to be restrained by saying what I've said, but I'm saying it with due respect. It is not the best thing to do with $13 million at this time, especially if you're going to borrow it. Upani lahan, okay, pwete lahan, pwai by moon sandwich. That is what I'm discussing. And Madam President, I'm making this point because we've done this over and over again in the public service over 25 years. And the people would tell you, you would hear the refrain, the thing, I've done this already, I know that already, there's nothing new under the sun. As a matter of fact, most of those consultants usually start with a précis, I am not coming and tell you anything that is new. That's how they start their consultancies with. And we all know it. You understand? And they're going to tweak it here and there. We have a competent, competent public service. We have a competent public service. You believe that Madam President, I am speaking to you. For this member to believe that only now we have a competent public service, I think he's out of this world. You should have been there when there were the likes of Miss Jennifer James. You should have been where I worked with Mr. Anthony and what have you. I worked back then in the 80s. We are able to do a lot more. So do not come and make it seem like now we have. Is this what I heard the leader of government business saying? Only now we have a competent public service? I rest my case here. I leave you for them. They will judge you because I believe they are far much better than what you say. Thank you very much, Madam.